morning. Happy Father's Day. I was excited to hear that we were going to sing Amazing Grace today because that was my dad's favorite hymn. And as I was sitting there, I could picture him in my mind's eye. He's holding his Bible like this. Remember Shannon? He always held it with his finger in there. And he would raise his hand as tears would pour down his face whenever we sang Amazing Grace. And I look at my dad's life and I see why, or I ask myself, why was this amazing grace so important to him? And I realized that my dad was a very wise man, and he knew without the grace of God he had nothing. And so for those of you who have a father who has left you a legacy like my dad did, be grateful, be thankful. For those of you who didn't or don't, know that God in heaven is your Father, and He has given you grace and mercy, and He has walked beside you every moment of your life. Just as I feel like my dad has walked with me and still does in some ways with his words. Now that I made myself all emotional, we have been talking about the Psalms of Ascent, not accent, Mike, but for the last few Sundays we have talked about that, and today we are going to look at Psalms 123. So if you have your Bibles, you may join with us as we read. I lift up my eyes to you who sit enthroned in heaven. As the eyes of slaves look to the hands of their master, as the eyes of a female slave looks to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till He shows us His mercy. Have mercy on us, Lord. Have mercy on us, for we have endured no end of contempt. We have endured no end of ridicule from the arrogant, of contempt from the proud. This is a psalm that I'm sure I have read before, but I have also overlooked it a lot. It's pretty short. And, I have a tendency to read it and think, here they are, the Israelites, complaining again about how badly they've been treated and asking God for help. It's a simple song. But there is some majorly big truths that we can find here. And as I prepared for this morning, I must admit that a lot of it really spoke to me and to my life. When I was teaching school, and third grade is what I taught, and that's where they start to teach you to put together papers and essays and 3-point paragraphs and all that stuff. And I would always tell my kids when they were trying to write about a certain subject, just answer the W's. What are the W's? Who, where, when, why, and what. So today, we're going to ask the W's. First, the what. The what is that this was a song that the Israelites sung as they made a journey toward the temple. It was a song of remembrance of another time, a song that they embraced because of its meaning to their people. Why? Why would this simple little song have so much meaning? Because it reminded them of a time that a prayer had been sent to the heavens and an answer had been received. Where was on their journeys, whether it was from a far-off land to the temple to celebrate Passover or any of the other feasts that they celebrated, that the God they worshiped wasn't really a God at all. They faced death if they did not bow down to stone gods. Sometimes they faced death if they chose not to eat the foods that they had been told were appropriate. The royalty of the Jewish people had been slaughtered and their children taken to serve the new king. Every minute of every day, they were told that they were contemptible. They had had enough. They were done. As always, they had tried to take care of it themselves. They had gone after the Babylonians. They tried to resist. It's what they always did. They tried to do it themselves. And as usual, they failed. But in this moment, when it had finally been enough, they lifted their eyes to the one who had always rescued them and begged for mercy. They said, "I lift up my eyes to you." The phrase, they acknowledged that they were addressing the God of heaven, which had the power of creating, destroying, aiding, or hindering. This is what they knew in their hearts. Even though for 70 years they had been told they were worthless, they knew that their God would hear their prayer when they acknowledged that He was their God. They didn't come to God with raised fists as to why didn't you do it my way, or loud voices demanding that He do something. They came as servants. As the eyes of slaves look at the hand of the master, as the eyes of a female slave looks to the hand of her mistress. Now, I don't think that this is in any way endorsing slavery, or that God saw or sees us as His slaves. David Cusick writes about the master-slave relationship during this time as having three major points. The slave was dependent because at that time the slave, everything that the slave needed was provided by the master. Their food, their clothes, their place to live. The second thing that we notice about the slave-master relationship, according to David, is submission. The hands of the master directed the servant's work. And the third was discipline. The hands of the master corrected the servant. So when the psalmist was saying, as I come to you as a slave, dependent, submissive, willing to accept your discipline, because you are God. These aren't things we like to think about today. At least I don't. I look at these words as bad words. They're a sign of weakness. And I don't like anyone to think I'm weak. Never have. I wear a lot of masks to hide the fact that I feel weak. I especially do not like the idea of dependence. I hate depending on other people for things. I hate needing other people. I want to be able to sing with Sinatra and Elvis. I did it my way. I don't like to ask for help. I don't even like thinking I need help. And when I finally break down and ask for help, I feel bad about it. Makes my self-esteem go just a little bit lower. And then I spend several days trying to figure out a way that I can pay back the person who helped me so that I don't owe them anything and that in some way I paid for it. We've heard Pastor Kevin say, if we refuse someone's help, you're depriving them of a blessing. Well, in the back of my mind, I have often said, I'll do it. Give me the blessing. Because I don't want to depend on anybody else. Now, Mr. Dunkel up there has given me quite a lesson in the last year and a half on letting people help me, as he has been my plumber, my electrician, I don't know all the things that he's done at our house in the last 2 years. But every time that Jeff does something and he leaves, I'm trying to find out a way that I can give back. Sometimes it's only a pizza, which Audrey enjoys more than Jeff, but there is something about me that just hates saying I need help. And then there is submission. You know, I think the motto of today's world is, you ain't my boss. I'm going to do it however I want to. And don't tell me that this is only a phrase you've heard from your 10-year-old's mouth. I am sure that you have said it, or something close to it, or at least thought it. However, if we look at submission from the point of view that as our master, God is directing the way we live our life, it's not giving up who we are. It's not changing our personality unless he directs us to do so. But the master directs to stay in our yard so that a car doesn't run over them. We discipline them when they go against these rules, not because we're mad at them, or it shouldn't be because we're mad at them, but it's because they need our guidance. So when the psalmist says he is looking to the heavens the way a slave looks to the master, he is not only reminding himself that he depends upon God for direction, discipline. He is admitting to God that he is needed. He knows that God is listening, and he says, "Here I am. I know who you are. I know that you are all-powerful." So please hear my fervent prayer, my prayer for relief. So our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us mercy. This prayer was urgent. The psalmist knew that they were in a place that they no longer could deal. They were done. The people were complaining. They were afraid. They had tried, but they were at the end of the rope. And so at this time, this psalmist falls to his knees and he says, Lord, show us your mercy. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not sure exactly when this song was written, but it was written sometime during the exile. Whether that was 10 years in, 30 years, or 70, we don't know. But when this prayer was said, they were already at the end of their rope. They were already done. I've been there. Have you been there? At the end? No hope? No way out? And some well-meaning person comes and tells you to pray, or pray harder, or have more faith. And you want to curl up in a ball and hide under the covers and scream at the injustice that has been visited upon your life. That's where they were at. But he fell to his knees and he said, Lord, have mercy on us. But he also said, until our eyes look to the Lord until he shows us his mercy. I have a tendency to get on my knees. Well, I don't get on my knees much anymore because it hurts too bad, but I have a tendency to go to God and say, I want it now. You've got 3 days and 5 hours, and then I need an answer. But that's not what the psalmist says here. He says, I will keep my eyes on you, O God of heaven, until you show us mercy. There was no time limit. You know, I wonder if the writer of this Psalms knew that even though they had been experiencing some very difficult times, that God was showing them mercy. Could he see the hand of God working on the hearts of his people, softening their rebellion, preparing them for the journey home? Did the writer understand that this exile had been one of the people's own making, and that God had led them to this place so that they would look to him for help? I don't know what the psalmist's thoughts were, but I know where he went to with them. He was begging for relief after admitting that they owed the master everything. The psalmist knew who he was talking to. He knew who his abusers were. But more than anything, he remembered the power of God. The last part of this prayer gives us an idea of how the Israelites felt and why they were begging for mercy. It said, for we have endured no end of contempt. We have endured no end of ridicule from the arrogant, of contempt from the proud. Let's look at this last part of Psalms 123 from today's point of view. What are the W's for today? Where? Here. There. Everywhere. When? Now. Yesterday. Probably tomorrow. Why? Because we don't understand or know or acknowledge God as Master, Savior, Creator, and Sustainer of life. You know, I think the who is the hardest W to answer when we think about today. Sometimes because we don't want to admit that our tormentors are people we love, society has made it its mission to tear down anybody that believes in God. They declare that it's all right to be different, that everyone should have the right to serve whoever they want, to worship whoever they want, to be whoever they want to be, and to do whatever they want to do, except if you're a Christian. Then you're contemptible, you're ignorant. And on a daily basis, we are told these things, sometimes. So who is our tormentors? Sometimes it's society as a whole. And then, unfortunately, sometimes the contempt comes from the person that sits next to us in church on Sunday. Sometimes it comes from friends who claim the name of Christ. They criticize our efforts to help the unlovable or those who are different. They question our faith when we struggle with addiction or mental health, sometimes even physical health. They judge our performance. They look at every minute of our life to find something that they think we need to pray about. They laugh at our convictions because those convictions don't agree with their own. And maybe there are times when we would just look to the Lord and say, I've had enough. I don't want to hear this anymore. I'm done. And yet the most powerful person who holds us in contempt is ourselves. We think that we are unlovable because of the things that we have done in the past. No one will ever forgive me. I was so stupid. Why did I do that? If they only knew. We think that our sins and our mistakes are too big to be forgiven. So we hold on to them like a security blanket. I'm not good enough because I did this, therefore I don't have to be good enough anymore. We believe the lies that our faith is weak because we're depressed or anxious or bipolar. We think that all of the things that others tell us is true. We look in the mirror and we see someone who should be held in contempt. We don't look in the mirror and see who God sees. A child whom He loves, whom He created. So, who is your tormentor? Who is the one that seems to hold you in contempt? Who looks down at you and says, I'm better. you ain't got nothing. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it is the outside world, our families, our church family, or ourselves. It doesn't matter if we call upon the God of heaven and say, please, I've had enough. Have mercy on me. We are tainted by sin. I don't know about you, but I've messed up. I have endured some hardships, some brought on by life, some I brought on myself. I have experienced ridicule and pain and fear. But because I was created in the image of God, I am worthy. You're worthy. Not because we deserve it. The psalmist wasn't coming and saying, God, because we're your people, save us. They came and said, as a servant, I come to you and I beg for relief. Because we are his children, we are loved. Because he sent his son, we can be forgiven. And if we have asked for forgiveness, he's already forgotten it. Because he promises he will walk beside us every day, we know that we can believe the promises. Because in the past he has proven that he does what he says, we can believe. And like the psalmist says, or like the Israelites do, I should say, they keep singing this song to remember God showed us his mercy. We ask and we receive. So as we look at this short little song, let us remember the times in our lives that he was there. The times in our lives when he delivered us from whatever it was that we can no longer endure. I'm going to ask the band to come back up. I have some bad news and some good news for you in this. The bad news, we are broken. The world is broken. We are in exile. Whether you've been walking down this road for years or days, when we come to the end, there's good news. Because no matter what we've done, no matter how much we have hurt others, how many times that we have failed, the good news is he loves us anyway.
If you'd like to sing along, please stand and join us if you're able. Graves into Gardens. Oh, I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. I encourage you to make this your prayer. Pray to God these words. Well, I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can.
I like what Ron said. Let's make this our prayer. So as we leave today, let's bow our heads and pray with me these words in your hearts. I'm not afraid to show you my weakness. My failures and flaws, Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. Because the God of the mountain is the God of the valley.